push the button at the top. And say charge when you do it. Using my cable, so that's too many pockets. Try that one. No worries. That's weird. That's in the vicinity of a farmer and a policeman was
Which one? Do you know?
We'll have a report to you at some point. Oh, yeah. Sorry. 7. Size. Size. Yeah, well, no, it's a big, so we don't tomorrow, did you hear you might be on?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Really? How's that after the break? Yes, that's the smaller. I'm still raving about how cool the tent is.
Oh, right, okay.
My goodness, the tent.
Let's hope it wasn't. It was barely. Let's hope it was barely defined.
David was great.
Huh?
David was great. And a gradual box as well. Send it back to me.
my hat, but no, I forgot it. I've got other things though. Yeah, we have. So we're doing PM shouts. How you doing? Morning.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Good. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Good.
I managed to come early.
Yeah. Well, you made it in. Yeah.
You see the farmers over there?
Yeah.
Apparently I've heard there's been one arrest. I'm doing
Sorry.
I've got information. There's been one arrest.
Has that? You report to me.
Section 14.
Really?
Okay, no, go to bed.
Okay.
So that I'm able to get
Yeah.
or you duck down to
I'll back down.
So I think so, yeah. I think the PMs didn't have those subjects, so I don't know if I'll be like out of it.
When on call.
But yes, that's what I recommend.
Good work. Thank you so much. Chris Hope, I'm here.
Hello, Kirsty. Okay, yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, cheers. Thank you, Louis.
Standing by, Tamara. Looking great. Reminding you.
Hi.
with you. And where's Reeves? Hey, Eddie, right? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You ready? Oh yeah. I'm up.
Instead, which could have a more uncertain outcome and backlash in a variety of different ways. So she's told them to back it. I understand she's also been having meetings in Downing Street with groups of Labour MPs to try and talk them into it. But things are tricky. The picture is tricky. She says that necessarily not fair decisions in the budget today, which will help those lowest income, for example, by raising the national minimum wage, and also we believe that she's going to lift the cap on child benefit, which is capped currently at 2 children, to try and alleviate child poverty. Both of those things will appeal to Labour MPs, but the criticism, of course, she'll get from Conservatives is that she should be cutting spending, cutting welfare spending, in particular, rather than raising taxes. So one of the tests for her is whether Labour MPs are going to hold their nerve for what will be a difficult few days and weeks, and of course how it's received by the public and in the markets. She's promised no return to austerity, but no borrowing spree either. Is that how they'll see it? So usually the Treasury rejects forecast for Budget Responsibility. starting from 10 years out of the budget and then sign those things. And the key things that we're looking for is keep her in his terms of headroom. That means how much money she is left with after following her fiscal rules, so not to break those. And so they will start the budget process weeks in advance, but just towards the end they have to refine those measures. And of course this time, as we've seen in the past, the political climate is crucial. We saw the lights on late last night in the Treasury. We saw them on very early when we got here at 7 a.m. this morning. There's been a lot of work that has gone into this and it's different reasons to try and appeal with it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
here, fine. Not on your way here. You can't see me here. Shouts.
If you could sit there, would be on the safer side.
Before that, in fact, away, the Chancellor will come out onto the steps around the hold out famous red box with cameras behind the barrier.
Oh yeah, they're not into it. The party is not into it. But you don't tell it as a fact, you just get me like online banking. Where that's happening.
What the direction of travel will be, because as we've been discussing throughout the morning, the plan has changed.
But who took all the exceptions? We don't even get actually accept that.
We will bring more people to the country. We will restore investor confidence and the months of speculation and special itself. Will the revenue trading budget really cover spending pressures that are coming back? Guiding us through.
How's the chance of that? Hello. Yeah, I want one of those.
I'm going to knock down until you see the front door rather than...
I need that. That's my job. You find out? Yeah, good. Yeah, I wasn't aware there's on Twitter. I'm basically I'm trying to call back what I'm told here without seeing too much. Yeah. Well, they're kettles now on that. We should use the word kettle, but I've got to go. You can't leave now. Okay. Shout from here.
Ready?
Ready? Okay. Here we go.
What does that mean? Necessary means that what you're selling to the public isn't necessarily going to be popular, it's going to be difficult, you're going to have to persuade them that it's something that you have to do if you're going to deliver your box. Because they want growth, as well as low inflation, they want growth. And they've been looking like they're slightly more relaxed. That analogy, they give the Chancellor a credit rating in markets where if they're worried about the public finances and prospects for the economy, then they'll cut the interest rates they're expecting in order to be fine the government's going to do its bills. But they want economic growth. So if we have a budget which is too heavy on the tax rates, we'll take the money out of the economy, bring it back in. It's not going to be expensive things. We're going to have to get enough economic growth. And that's quite hard in the politics of it. She's made choices already. Raise income tax, we've not to get back to with a surcharge on their payments, the record profits. So within those choices, she's narrowed her scope.
PM might leave in the 10 minute range.
What that fair and necessary means. So necessary is very much within that
1 minute.
We won't get to PM leaving.
1 minute.
if she wants to.
Is that fine? You won't get to PM leaving.
So
1 minute away.
it's a choice. We're certainly the same as so true. If you stood here 18 months ago when Keir Starmer was riding the demonstration and said there was a possibility that his budget would fall apart to his Labour MPs, that would be reflected on that. A lot has happened in the year and a half with Labour being in power, and the
most instructive thing to look at is the welfare. The government tried to make some different decisions on welfare to bring the welfare down. They going to go down to the extent that they could to work hard at the welfare of people today in terms of where to find money from. Just to be clear, when we're talking about welfare, there's kind of two parts to the story. One is the welfare cuts, which looks like it's against the welfare properly. The other is what we can see today, was actually some budget. Yes, there is a few problems for the why? Because these are the folks we obviously, they know they want to see a change of tack. There's also such a big majority. We have such a big majority. Some MPs who majority is slightly smaller, reluctant to think they have the space to do it. But there is no doubt that the Rachel Reeves to sell this to Labour MPs. It's hardly the way they play. We're talking about a budget that looks set, looks like it's been designed specifically to win over Labour MPs, such as some of the measures of
Prime Minister, is Christmas cancelled? Are you about to break your welfare pledges? Why are you about to unfreeze tax thresholds? How can voters trust you?
I can ask, but I would expect it will be close to a pound. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Lovely. And then Eleanor, when she comes out, I will crouch very quickly and continue talking so you have a full shot of her. And then I'll do my little shout when she walks away from the door. Can I ask you a stylistic question? Yeah, I'm going to say, is this budget just about your own survival, or will it be your last? Stylistic question. Is this jumper maybe too casual under my coat? It's just like a black top over my chest. It's so cold. Cute girl.
Sit on this now.
back in 15, James. Lovely, thank you.
Good morning, James. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is about to come out number 11 Downing Street, where, as you point out, I am standing right outside. This morning, she has already held a cabinet meeting with the Prime Minister, where they've gone through that budget, her second massive budget, signed it off. The Prime Minister has left the Prime Minister's questions a few minutes ago. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, we are all waiting, the entire British press now, waiting down for her to come out. So we'll shout a question at her and see that brilliant image of her holding up that iconic red.
The door's over there, mate. I shout here, you can pick up on it.
Yeah, it should be loud enough. Mike's right here.
Is Christmas cancelled? Are you about to break your manifesto pledges? Why are you about to freeze tax thresholds when you said you wouldn't? How can voters trust you, Chancellor? Are you coming back for more next year? Chancellor, how can voters trust you? Will you freeze tax thresholds? Is Christmas cancelled? Who's going to suffer the most, Chancellor? Will thresholds be frozen? Is that a breach of your manifesto, Chancellor? How can voters trust the thing you say, Chancellor? Should we cancel the turkey, Chancellor? Are you coming back for more next year, Chancellor? Why are you breaking your manifesto promises to us, Chancellor? Are you the Grinch?
and in recent years some overly optimistic forecasting from the OBR. There will be a downgrade, we're told today, in the productivity forecast. This week, she asked the fractious left of the party to be patient and to back the whole package, not cherry-pick the parts that they like best. The question now is whether she can deliver something credible enough for the markets and reassuring enough for our local bank pensions. With me in Downing Street to guide us through the day, Nick and Andrew Veggie. Welcome to you both. Jeff, is in.
I mean, it's make or break in the sense that if she gets this right, she might buy herself to the Prime Minister a bit more instead of the shift. How many times have we seen big questions about her future, about the Prime Minister's future, over unforced errors? A lot of MPs extremely unhappy with what's been going on behind both of these doors over the last few weeks. Is it the case that if this goes badly wrong, the Chancellor is done? Probably not immediately, in the sense that there isn't an obvious mechanism by which the Labour Party start to change things. But be under no illusion, politically, this is a huge, huge moment for us. Being on the back view, we've struggled to set a narrative of what it wants to do with power. Today will be an attempt to change it. We've got a lot of the detail in there just now. I'm sure Rachel Reeves is giving them her pitch for why this is a budget we need to deliver. She's been doing that all week actually. On Monday she was speaking to backbench Labour and telling them this was going to be a budget that was difficult but necessary. I think that probably gives us a sense of where we're going to be this afternoon. There's going to be some stuff in there that's really unpopular. There's got a lot of criticism over the next 24 or 48 hours. But it feels, Christian, that when you look at what we know is in there, what we think is in there, what might be in there, it feels like a budget that is aimed at Rachel Reeves' party. It's going to matter how this goes down. The markets, of course, it's going to matter how this goes down. The business world will seem pretty unhappy for what we've heard so far. When you look at things like scrapping the geopolitics cap, you look at the tax rises that are coming, you look at the mansion tax reform that ends up taking, you look at the promise not to be spending more cash in the NHS, more money to tackle the cost of living. That's the sort of stuff the Labour MPs will chew your ear off about. So I think a lot of them by tonight might be pretty happy. As ever, we're working on the previews, which are designed to set the agenda for number 11. Devil seems to appreciate the detail.
Andy, look, I mean, all governments.
Well, Rachel Reeves has urged them to shut down. It's a couple of hours until she emerges from number 11 with her red box. She will be aware that there is talk in Westminster about the future of her and of Keir Starmer, whether they can go the distance, given that the change they promised at the election has been slow to materialise. They face threats from the left and from the right. She knows this budget has to land well. Labour MPs with the market, she's probably no return to austerity, but no borrowing spree either. And of course with the public, this government is looking pretty unpopular according to opinion polls. She says it will be a Labour budget to help those with the lowest incomes, so expect essentially to be a rise in the national living wage to £12.71 an hour, putting about a grand into the pockets of people on those lowest incomes. And Labour MPs also likely get something they can push for, which is the lifting of a £2 cap on benefits. So how will it be paid for is of course the big question that we're expecting. Not one big lever to raise £7 or £8 billion. Income tax, they dropped that idea upon the range of tax rises. We expect people with high value homes, savers, certain people are saving for their pensions. So there's a question about how it will go down when she buys the government any time, any goodwill to get through what we know will be extremely Thank you. I'll see you at 10.
Or just for Yeah, I mean, a couple of points there, Christian. What you said at first.
Thank you. You don't need
to balance money coming out with money going in.
I'm going to go back to 10.
Actually, there have been 5 times since 1975.
11,
and over the last 125 years, only 14 times in those 125 years, the budget's been surplus. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily, because
with no, I would
than in the last 15, because so hard on austerity. The Chancellor's job is not just to be a steward of the public finances.
How is your analysis of that
when the government's in
is there a U-turn in your thing?
So when the government's in surplus, that's not necessarily a good thing for households and firms. So on the one hand, people want the public finances.
Yep, see, fine.
She'll want to reinsure the markets. She doesn't want bond markets to take fright like she did later on.
You've got all the gear, you've got all the gear.
But it's not, it's kind of a false dichotomy to say if you depart at all from your self-imposed fiscal targets, then the markets are going to sell off. If you change those targets...
I'll be back at 10, technically.
What are they?
Sure.
This is just a impact. The government says, in a few years' time, we want to be spending less than we're getting in on day-to-day stuff like benefits and civil servant salaries. Okay, so that's been the promise since around about 99%. The number of times that promise has actually been met? Once. 2000, 2001. That's right, exactly. So you've got and what use is it to have somebody give you a forecast 3 years from now, which is very likely not to come true? So just to give you one example. Well, there is an argument about that. We have a situation where the OBR, which has been there since 2010, before 2010, everything hangs on its forecast. And there's a question here as to whether the forecast there is rather the actual stock. So, these things start to work out what's going to happen to the public finances when we take the various actions. But to start with the forecast 3 years from now, work backwards, and then set your policy based on that, a lot of people are now questioning whether that's a sensible framework. Much longer time. If you want to get net zero, for example, you haven't found any totally
things that you naturally associate with water. We're really general about it. Decent salaries, yes, you'll be paying more tax. We were just talking about. Maybe if you've got an electric car, you're going to be paying a bit more tax because there's going to be a charge per mile. And one of the really interesting things that's perhaps a bit misunderstood about this budget is when you speak to MPs from both sides, particularly Labour MPs, they think that scrapping the food child policy is the right thing to do. They don't think it's popular. And polling actually suggests it's really unpopular with a lot of people who might actually be Labour voters. So there's a thought in this that's going to be really complicated. And I suppose the ultimate test over the next few days, when people at home sit down and use the budget calculators or figure out all the things that are going to matter to them, is do they feel, one, be better off, or two, do they think it's fair? Because a lot of people, I suspect, will be prepared to be a bit more taxed if they think it's a benefit. The danger for the government is that if the smorgasbord of taxes, that people will slowly realise that they are better off. And with the spending already set out, they don't feel like they've seen the benefits.
Well, our special coverage will begin around 11:15, just ahead of the Chancellor. Okay. What's next? Can we just start? Sorry, say that again. director just needs to tell us what shots. Right. Could you let us know what shots you would like? Because the camera crew, we have 3 cameras here, so they just need a bit more direction. 1 is on me, and 2 is pointing that way. Right, did you hear this thing about the cameras? You did? Yeah, news package 54 is on the number 11 camera is on package 54. Okay, yep. And Vicky's Pratt is here, so we can do that as well. Oh, do we don't have a third mic, do we? No. Good. Bring her in. Yeah? 4th mic, yes. Sorry, yes. That's why I'm not an economic. Maybe we should talk about debt. If debt were a political harm, cost of service. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's a bit like your credit. So simply, the bond markets evaluate the prospects for the UK economy and set an interest rate that they demand in order to compensate themselves for their risk. If the UK Chancellor has poor credit because we're not sure how she's going to make her fiscal targets work, then they might charge a higher interest rate. Now, the signs are so far is that they're trying to charge a lower interest rate as these weeks, which does suggest that her efforts to appease the buyers and sellers in the bond market have been reasonably successful. Thanks for our guests. So you're going to give the Chancellor a C. I suspect she'll see this audience review. She's going to be able to take to the second I think the Conservatives have called for to balance the book. So yes, in that sense, I do think she has some confidence. People look at public services and quite often question why they're not working. It's an example of being on the chest, there will be more cash in the chest and the budget. However, I do think we will see sometimes, I don't know exactly what they will look like, but one of the key areas that's been discussed is welfare. Wants to bring down the cost of welfare, we struggle to do it because they've got on board with the plan that was announced earlier in the year. But in terms of how you view the big picture of this budget, the Conservatives saying, look, one of the big problems here is we're just spending too much. The state's too big, we need to reduce the size of it. The Chancellor's rejected it. I think she's not going to have big spending to services. We want to focus instead on tax rises, because we think austerity again will be damaging. That links back
well, this is something, there's so much going on in this budget. And we want to bring it to Oh, absolutely. And also people are going to sell just below to make sure they can get a buyer. I think it would be in that sense. What I would say though is lots of clients I've spoken to were actually in favour of the initial system because people have that are worth much more than they were in the 90s. Unfortunately, the sector owners in London. So I think just doing it the right time. We don't know what's happening on stamp duty, but I would say rumours about stamp duty is relatively large, at least I've been hearing this in August. There are people who are not listing crops because they're waiting to find out what's going to happen today. And that's getting ready.
All right, well, thank you very much. Short council, when we get the statement, Welcome back. We are in Downing Street ahead of the Chancellor's statement. Very Andy, on the economic side,
why are we in this doom loop? I mean, in a way, people have been struggling to answer that question for the last 20 years, particularly with regards to productivity. So productivity is the amount workers produce per annum. It's not about how much you work, it's also to do with the technology inputs about how much you produce. In the 20th century, that used to go up by more than 2% a year, and that was why employers could afford inflation-beating pay rises. But since about 2004, it's been struggling to get off the ground. There are questions as to whether we're measuring it correctly. But this illustrates the point I was making earlier. By downgrading its forecast for productivity, the Office for Budget Responsibility puts Rachel Reeves in a situation where she has to find another £21 billion. The word find is inappropriate for a fiat currency government which just spends money into existence. That's how it works. It doesn't find it from some magic pot where it's saying it to it. But nevertheless, if she wants to hit her self-imposed fiscal targets, she then needs to adjust her tax and spending rates in order to accommodate that, and that's why there's been such talk of tax rises. But as for the doing it's nothing happens. I mean, you've got a huge generational inequality that Vicky was alluding to, where house price rises redistribute wealth upwards from the young to old, poor to the rich. What we've had over the last 25 years is super low interest rates that have made credits really cheap to push down prices. Also, only policy to push down prices even further. And you have this horrible misdistribution of space where the people who need capitals, young families, the people who don't have nowhere to sell down to. If they could downsize to suitable properties to people getting older, needing care, then that could be a different situation. But we have a frozen up housing market which doesn't work to serve people's needs. So that's one of the long-term needs. Another is just private indebtedness. The private indebtedness that's taken off alongside these prices has meant that we're vulnerable to crises like the 2008 crisis. and we are totally reliant on interest rates now. So we raise interest rates in order to control inflation. Who does that hit? It hits the people who are worried the most, young people. Who does it benefit? It benefits the people who save the most, older people. Who's getting a triple knock rise in their income and their state pension income? Older people. Who's getting hit with freezes in working age benefits? Who has been for the last 5 years working age? So these generational differences are becoming more and the politics in terms of things that wave up has left young people very frustrated, as I'm sure you can agree. It's very difficult to expect.
Absolutely, that's a huge problem. It does relate to that. I agree with you, yes, and most developed other places in the world, they don't are able to spend their to do other things. It's a huge problem. Lots of people it's being landlords feel like they own until their mortgages because they're like it's very hard. High interest rate and against properties. We now know that mortgages into I'm hearing from people that they have to sign bits of paper by mortgage lenders to say that they will work on that retirement age so they can keep paying mortgages. Our health problem is fundamentally changed and it is having a health effect on that generation. But addressing policy is truly addressing the conduct, which is why politicians stay away from it.
It's also not sure that almost to make the point that better for you. They're not putting up with the way. Which is great if you have a job and if you're saving that incomes, but there won't be that much this will squeeze out more jobs and businesses by increase the taxes. It's also worth remembering, Ricky was just saying, this is a government that's promised to deal with the housing shortage of bringing houses down by building a lot more. That is something else. This proved frustratingly difficult for ministers to do. They say they're still going to achieve the goals, but a lot of people are struggling to see how that's going to happen.
Stephen's term as High Commissioner comes to an end. We wish him all the best in retirement and thank you for what you've done in the UK. We now come to questions to the Prime Minister. Rachel Hopkins.
Question 1, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, can I begin by confirming your remarks about Stephen, who's in the gallery, as I understand it. He's been an incredible servant and a good friend to the United Kingdom, and we wish him well in everything he does in the future. Mr. Speaker, today's budget will be a Labour budget with Labour values to deliver for the British people's priorities. Mr. Speaker, I know what it feels like to sit around the kitchen table worried about bills that can't be paid. That's why this budget is for families that I know today are equally worried about the cost of living. That's why we're rolling out free breakfast clubs, free childcare and free school meals. And today we'll be going further to deliver the change we're elected to bring about. Cutting NHS waiting lists, cutting the national debt and cutting the cost of living. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Rachel Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For years and years, rail fares have gone up and up, but this is set to change next year. Can the Prime Minister confirm that commuters in my constituency will see around £400 saving on their annual season ticket as a result of this government freezing rail fares? And can he confirm this is only possible because we have a Labour government?
Well, I can confirm next year we're freezing rail fares for the first time in 30 years. saving millions of commuters hundreds of pounds. And yes, that's only possible because we have a Labour government investing in Great British Railways and putting more money in the pockets of passengers. Contrast our approach with the leader of the opposition who says the minimum wage is a burden, she thinks, and she wants to means test the state pension.
We now come to the leader of the opposition, Kerry Burnell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I first pay tribute to the many farmers who have come to Westminster today to protest the shameful attack on them in last year's budget. I want them to know that Conservatives stand with them. Mr. Speaker?
Yeah. They arrest them, we stand with them.
Mr. Speaker, this has been the most chaotic lead-up to a budget in living memory, with resignations, hostile briefings, and...
Can I just say to a couple of you, if you don't want the budget, make your mind up now.
Nobody wants this budget, Mr. Speaker. With resignations, hostile briefings, and leaks galore, even just in the last 10 minutes, an unprecedented leak of the OBR analysis.
Unbelievable.
Mr. Speaker, these leaks have been so serious that even the former chief economist of the Bank of England has said, and I quote, that Labour's fiscal fandango is the single biggest reason why growth has flatlined. Does the Prime Minister agree with Andy Haldane, and does he have an explanation for this complete shambles?
We all know the biggest shambles in living history, the Liz Truss budget. And what did she say at the time? Did she say, I don't agree, this must be wrong? No, she said, I think Liz Truss is 100% right. 100%. Not much room for flexibility. Not one thing was wrong with it, in her view. So we won't be taking lectures from her. Matters for the OBR. The Chancellor will set out the budget in just a few minutes' time.
Mr. Speaker, we're talking about the leaks. The Prime Minister doesn't seem to appreciate the impact of these budget leaks on the UK economy. Even the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister has said this morning that the leaks were unacceptable. So will the Prime Minister launch an investigation into the budget leaks and punish those responsible?
Mr. Speaker, it's literally about 25 minutes before the budget will be set out in August, where we'll take further decisions. The Chancellor will set it out, but thanks to the decisions she's already taken, we've got 5 million extra NHS appointments, waiting lists are coming down, mortgages are cheaper, we've expanded free school meals, that's 100,000 children lifted out of poverty, a moral mission for this government. Compare that to the record opposite any day of the week.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about the decisions she's already taken. If they were that great, we wouldn't have all those farmers outside protesting. He doesn't want to talk about leaks, but we can see that the chaos in Number 10 is having real-world consequences. Instead of focusing on the economy, they've been fighting like rats. Several journalists reported that Number 10 sources had briefed against the Health Secretary and other senior cabinet ministers. The Prime Minister then told us that these briefings did not come from Number 10. Will he repeat on the floor of the House the claim that none of his advisers has briefed against members of the Cabinet?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've been really clear about this. No one in Number 10 has briefed against Cabinet ministers. And the Health Secretary is doing a fantastic job. He stood before the electorate just before the last election. He said we'd deliver 2 million extra appointments for the NHS in the first year of a Labour government. There he is. What did he do? Not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 million extra appointments for the NHS. They don't understand this language, Mr. Speaker, because they left everything absolutely broken.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister expects us to believe him. No one does. We all know that he did not have a serious leak inquiry. What he did, Mr. Speaker, was he asked Morgan McSweeney to investigate Morgan McSweeney, and then Morgan McSweeney discovered that Morgan McSweeney was innocent. All of this calls into question the Prime Minister's judgment. All of this calls into question the Prime Minister's judgment. We read this weekend that he wants the former Deputy Prime Minister back in his cabinet. He must have forgotten that she had to resign only a few months ago for tax evasion. When did the Prime Minister decide that lawbreakers can be lawmakers?
Mr. Speaker, while she's scrolling through Twitter, we've delivered rail fares frozen, prescription charges frozen, the minimum wage boosted. We're focusing on the cost of living, the single most important thing for this country. She's focusing on tittle-tattle.
It's not tittle-tattle, Mr. Speaker. We all know that he's only talking about welcoming the Deputy Prime Minister back because he is desperate to shore up his crumbling leadership. But if he were to welcome her back, will he set a condition that she must pay back the £40,000 of property taxes she avoided, the same property taxes they're very happy to put on everyone else, and will she also return her £17,000 of severance pay?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the former Deputy Prime Minister is the biggest social mobility story this country has ever told. She started from humble beginnings and fought her way to the very top. I'm very proud of what she's achieved in politics. I'm very proud of everything she's done for this Labour government.
That sounds like a no, Mr. Speaker. I've never heard the Prime Minister speak so highly of people avoiding their taxes. But in summary, this just looks like a government that is a slow-motion car crash. His cabinet are briefing against each other, his MPs are planning for life after him, and the most chaotic run-up to a budget in recent memory is happening on his watch. Even the Chief Whip is telling MPs that he wants out. The truth is simple, Mr. Speaker. His MPs don't trust him, the markets don't trust him, and the public certainly don't trust him. When will he finally accept that the chaos starts and ends with him?
The most chaotic budget was the Liz Truss budget. It did huge damage to our country. We're still suffering from that damage. And what did she say about Liz Truss? She obviously does still think it. When asked, was Liz Truss right? 100% right, she said. The most chaotic, damaging budget there's ever been. And she sticks by it. I'm very interested to see her response to this budget if she thinks Liz Truss got it right. Mr. Speaker, what we're doing is focusing on cutting waiting lists, cutting the national debt, cutting the cost of living, renewing our country, a Labour budget with Labour values, delivering for the British people.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the moment, everyone is being bombarded with adverts and emails for Black Friday, encouraging them to spend money on so-called time-limited deals, leading to panic buying, increasing debt, buyer regret, and not to mention the impact on the planet, with delivery and returns of goods responsible for millions of tonnes of CO2 emissions. Does he agree with me that instead of rushing to buy online, people should look to their high streets to support local businesses and keep money in the local economy this Christmas?
Well, I want to see our high streets thriving, and we encourage everyone to support local businesses this Christmas. Through our small business strategy, we got £3 billion boost to help small businesses expand, and we've tackled the most significant reforms to tackle late payments, the most significant in 25 years, Mr. Speaker. And the Chancellor will have to say more about that in just a moment.
Ed David, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've just seen in the leaked OBR documents that taxes are going up to a historic record high. So will the Prime Minister explain why Labour is hiking people's taxes instead of fixing the £90 billion Brexit black hole in the public finances by growing our economy with a new, detailed, brilliant trade deal with our European partners?
Well, he'll only have to wait a few minutes for the full details of the budget. But, Mr. Speaker, every week he comes here with the same problem. He always wants more spending, and he never wants to say how he's going to raise the money for it. The two things can't go together.
So, Ed Davey.
Speaker, we want to grow the economy, not tax the economy. But if I can take him on to another issue, Mr. Speaker, I hope everyone in the House shares my alarm that a former leader of a political party in Wales has been found guilty of betraying our country and has now been sentenced to over 10 years in prison for his treachery. The Prime Minister said that reform should hold an independent investigation, and he is right. But we both know that that's not going to happen. So given reform won't, he must. So will he now launch a national investigation into Russian infiltration into our politics?
Well, he's right to highlight this very serious case, a long sentence for pro-Russian bribery in the Reform Party at the highest level. You would think a leader of a political party would want to get to the bottom of that and ask the question, how on earth did that happen in the Reform Party? And what other links are there between Reform and Russia? But no, the leader of Reform doesn't want to do it. Because, Mr. Speaker, we know he doesn't want to know the answer to the question because Reform is riddled with pro-Putin propaganda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of traffic chaos and increasingly creative traffic diversions, residents of Parkside and Marston Grange in my constituency are beginning to wonder whether the A513 at Beaconside is a permanent monument to the traffic cone. In the time that Staffordshire County Council and Taylor Wimpey have taken to complete one stretch of road, we've had 6 Prime Ministers, not to mention Notre Dame burned down and was rebuilt using medieval building techniques. So what can be done to hold developers and local authorities properly to account so that essential infrastructure is delivered on time with minimum disruption?
Well, it's staggering that an important upgrade for drivers to improve their journeys has been delayed for 8 long years. And I understand the scheme is currently being held up by the Reform-led council, Kel Sabri, who are proving as hopeless in local government as everybody anticipated. Mr. Speaker, we've invested £24 billion in our roads, and I call on Staffordshire Council to end the delay, get on with the job, and get this scheme started for her constituents.
Alison Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. University Hospitals Sussex currently have 350 people, well enough to go home, for occupying beds. That is the same number of beds as in the Princess Royal Hospital in Haywards Heath in my constituency. The reason they can't go home is because there is no social care package for them to go to. This is terrible for them, puts strain on the trust and is ruinous to the taxpayer. Given there is no urgent plan to reform social care, what is the Prime Minister's plan to bring them home for Christmas?
Well, as she knows, we are reforming social care, and I've asked Baroness Casey to lead on that. And she's had the first of her cross-party meetings to build consensus, which is obviously what we need on this. As I've set out a number of times, the first phase will report in 2026, so we can reform as we go on. There will obviously be a phase after that. And I remind the House we've already boosted social care funding by £3.7 billion, record increases also to the carers allowance, and £500 million for the first ever fair pay agreement to properly recognise and reward carers.
Luke Kirkos.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is the Prime Minister aware that because of the decision by Reform's Durham County Council to scrap support introduced by Labour in 2013, a typical working family in Stanley will be £170 worse off? How would the Prime Minister contrast the values of this Labour government with a Reform Party dividing our country and hitting working people in their pockets?
Well, I thank him for raising this. The more we see of Reform, the more we see their true colours. In this case, making people £170 worth off. But their true colours also in relation to the member for Clacton. His explanation, Mr. Speaker, in recent days, in relation to the stories about what he may have said in the past, is unconvincing to say the least. He says he never engaged with racism with intent. With intent. What does that mean? Didn't engage with racism with intent. I have no doubt that if a young Jewish student was hissed at to mimic the sound of a gas chamber, they would find it upsetting. He may want to forget that. They won't. He clearly remembers some of what happened. He should seek those people out and go and apologise to them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Lewis, not his real name, is an Eastbourne boy with special educational needs who was left traumatised after his passenger assistant relentlessly and brutally restrained him on his home-to-school transport. It only became clear to Lewis's mum, who's in the gallery today, what happened on that day when he returned home visibly distressed and bruised. And that's because, shockingly, there is no statutory requirement to report incidents of physical restraint on school transport, nor national training standards. So will the Prime Minister address this loophole in his upcoming SEND reforms to ensure that SEND children in Eastbourne and beyond can travel to school with the safety and dignity that they deserve?
Well, can I say to him and to Lewis's mum, who's with us, that incidents like that should not be happening. I know that he's met, I think, with the Education Minister to discuss this. Every child should have tailored support, including on transport to school, and I can reassure him and Lewis's mum that that principle will be central to our reforms.
Jenny Riddle-Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, Roman Osborne, a 10-year-old in my constituency, hand-delivered a letter to 10 Downing Street to tell the Prime Minister about an accident that he had outside his primary school of Trimley St Martin in February, which left him spending 3 days in hospital and many, many more months recovering. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister back my campaign, Safer at the Gates, and will he call on Tory-led Suffolk County Council to do the right thing and re-review the road and put the right safety measures in place outside Trimley St Martin and the other schools in my constituency?
Can I thank her for that and thank Roman for his letter, which I took time to read last night. And I wanted just to read a short sentence from it, from Roman. He said this accident wouldn't have happened if there was a safe place to cross the road. I'm concerned for other children's safety, and I don't want another accident like mine to happen again to anyone else. Mr. Speaker, what an incredible young boy, aged just 10. I totally agree with him, and I say to Roman, this is what we're going to do. Roman, I've asked ministers to work with all the right people to look at his school and get a safe crossing in place. And the Roads Minister will be happy to meet my honourable friend to discuss the road safety strategy.
Mr. Speaker, this morning I met with farmers on Whitehall, and on Saturday farmers supplying milk to family-run White Farms who have been making traditional cheddar cheese near Bruton for 160 years. They all told me, Mr. Speaker, the family farm tax as it stands will devastate their businesses. So if he really wants growth, will the Prime Minister listen to farmers, industry, the EFRA Select Committee, even his own MPs, and pause and rethink this damaging and regressive tax?
Mr. Speaker, we've invested a record £11.8 billion into sustainable farming this Parliament, and we set out a 25-year farming roadmap focused on increasing year-on-year productivity and profitability in farms. That is vitally important.
Jen Craft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the COVID inquiry reported that 23,000 deaths occurred in England in the first wave of the pandemic that could have been prevented due to the UK response being too little too late. These were not just 23,000 deaths, Mr. Speaker. These were 23,000 people who had family and friends who loved them, and valuable lives that were cut short due to an abysmal failure of leadership by Boris Johnson and his government. They were categorically failed by a Prime Minister who prevaricated, delayed and prioritised political expediency over making the tough decisions that could have averted tragedy. If the Prime Minister were to lead us through the next pandemic, will he value saving lives above all else?
Well, she's right. The report is a sombre moment, and it's important to remember the scale of suffering and the scale of the loss of life, which is made clear in the testimonies of the families in the report, and to remember the incredible contribution of frontline workers and everyone who focused on protecting others. Mr. Speaker, we're committed to learning the lessons needed from the COVID inquiry to protect and prepare us for the future. And the pandemic does still weigh heavily on our public finances and our NHS. That's why we've already conducted a pandemic exercise to test preparedness and agreed a historic global pandemic agreement to improve our ability to prevent global disease threats alongside our partners.
Adam Dance.
Mr. Speaker, I hope the Prime Minister will agree with me that the defence industry in Somerset is a key engine for growth, jobs and innovation. Leonardo in Yeovil is making a fantastic progress with the Proteus uncrewed helicopter, but the future of that project, thousands of jobs at the site in Yeovil, and the 320 million Leonardo contribute to local GDP is dependent on the new medium helicopter contract. Will the Prime Minister reassure my constituents that he supports the industry in Yeovil, and will his government finally get round to awarding this long overdue contract?
Well, can I pay tribute to those in Somerset and his constituency in the defence sector, which is hugely important to our country and our security. I can confirm we're continuing with the establishment procurement process for the new medium helicopter programme to deliver modern equipment for our armed forces. That's part of the biggest sustained boost to our defence since the Cold War, and I'm determined to see a defence dividend of investment in British jobs and apprentices, including in his constituency. Mr Speaker, that builds on the £8 billion Typhoon deal that we've secured, the £4 billion maritime deal with Indonesia, and the £10 billion frigate deal with Norway.
Serena Blackenbridge.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I joined Wensfield Men walking and talking on International Men's Day, a fantastic group who are strengthening our community through good company and what Stephen calls a growing band of brothers. In an age of pressure, polarisation and endless phone scrolling, they bring men together to support one another. Will the Prime Minister join me in congratulating all involved and explain how the first ever men's health strategy will back similar grassroots initiatives?
Can I thank her? It is so important that men have the space and support from their peers to discuss their mental health. Can I thank Men Walking and Talking for the work that they do that makes such a difference? We were proud to launch our men's health strategy last week to get more men the support they need. And Mr Speaker, I wanted to take a moment to thank my honourable friend for Cannock Chase for his honesty and bravery on International Men's Day. And I say again, men speaking so truthfully about their experiences is so powerful and inspires more to do the same. He's a credit to this House.
Great job. Thank you, Mr Speaker. Consequential to President Trump's misunderstanding of Putin's assessment going forward into, I've got it completely wrong, so let me do it without notes. There we are. What a day to do it. So, President, I can't. I've completely lost it, and I apologise. So let me read it. Let me read it because I'm going to carry on. I'm afraid the Prime Minister's not going to get away that easy. So, consequential to President Trump's misunderstanding of Putin's strategic intent for both Ukraine and Europe is the Prime Minister's solemn responsibility to keep this country safe. Given the hypersonic missile threat and the ballistic missile threat, known threat from Russia, and the fact that the United Kingdom has no current counter to that, what is the Prime Minister going to do to keep this country safe from those that have already threatened us?
I thank him for his question and his contribution to this important debate, and of course the contribution he made yesterday as well. It is the first duty of the Prime Minister to keep this country safe. It's the duty that is paramount and above all else, and I take it extremely seriously and treat it as my number one priority. We review our security and defence arrangements all of the time, and we are particularly a leading member in NATO, which is the single most effective military alliance the world has ever seen.
Ben Coleman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My constituents in Chelsea and Fulham tell me that our top national priority must remain, as it is, economic growth. So does the Prime Minister agree that the swiftest way to achieve growth is for the government to be even more ambitious in negotiating with the European Union to remove the new red tape and trade barriers that have been holding back UK businesses, especially small and medium-sized ones, since the Conservatives' poorly managed exit from the European Union?
Well, the deal we struck with the EU will deliver on what the British public voted for last year, which is, as he says, boosting economic growth and restoring positive relations. And the deal we've struck is worth £9 billion to our economy in 2040. It includes an SBS agreement to cut supermarket prices and boost export opportunities. And the tourism reform would rip up that deal and leave us all paying more at the checkout.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to economic growth, this Labour government is all talk and no action. So maybe I can help the Prime Minister. Roadworks and traffic jams cost the UK economy £8 billion last year. This affects my constituents in Broxbourne every single day. They want to know what the government is doing about it, when the government is going to back working people and get Britain moving.
Under this government, growth is the highest in the G7 for the first half of this year. Under the last government, they crashed the economy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday was the UN International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, otherwise known as White Ribbon Day in Milton Keynes and many other places. Will the Prime Minister join with me in congratulating Mr. Speaker on his commitment that this House will become the first national White Ribbon Parliament in the world? And will he join me, Mr. Speaker, and many members from across this House in making the White Ribbon promise to never use, excuse, or remain silent about men's violence against women?
Can I thank her for raising this really important issue? And I'm really proud, Mr. Speaker, on what you've done with this Parliament in relation to the White Ribbon campaign. We must then turn that from a ribbon into action. And I am really proud that this government is fully committed to tackling violence against women and girls. It is a political commitment, it is a personal commitment from me, and we'll do everything we can in relation to reducing violence against women and girls, which is pernicious. It is far more widespread than people appreciate, and we absolutely have to stop talking and start doing in relation to this.
Final question, Liz Sabble-Roberts.
From his previous answer, we can only conclude that the Prime Minister has faith in the member of Clacton to police his own party on Russian interference. But the leader of Reform has already said that this is beyond his capabilities. Why, therefore, is the Prime Minister so unwilling to take responsibility and launch a full investigation into foreign interference in our democracies?
Interference in our democracy, but the responsibility for the investigation of what happened in Reform lies with the leader of the Reform Party. Mr. Speaker, he's usually got plenty to say, and now he's totally silent on one of the most important issues. Mr. Speaker, he needs to speak up and answer those questions.
That completes Prime Minister's questions.
Point of order, Melstride.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On a point of order, Madam Deputy Speaker, this morning we have seen an unprecedented leak of the OBR's Economic and Fiscal Outlook report before the budget. This report contains market-sensitive information. It is utterly outrageous that this has happened, and this leak may indeed constitute a criminal act. In Prime Minister's questions, the Leader of the Opposition asked the Prime Minister about this leak, but he refused to answer her question. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, please can you advise this House what steps are at its disposal to force a leak inquiry into this matter? And would it be possible to ask the Table Office to distribute copies of the report given to the House, given that everybody outside of this House has already had the opportunity to read it?
Order! This is not a point of order for the Chair. The Chancellor is about to make her budget statement, and I expect members and their constituents wish to hear from the Chancellor directly. However, before I call the Chancellor to speak, I nonetheless wish to make a short statement. For a number of weeks, and yet again yesterday, there have been extensive briefings to the media
on the government's fiscal policy and public finances. This disappointing trend in relation to budget briefings has been growing for a number of years under successive governments, but appears to have reached an unprecedented high. Weeks ago, we saw the Chancellor delivering a speech in Downing Street, setting the scene for the budget, as well as specific policy announcements being briefed out to the media in advance of today's financial statements. I don't need any help. And just a moment ago, it seems the OBR analysis has also appeared online. This all falls short of standards that the House expects. The premature disclosure of the contents of the budget has always been regarded as a supreme discourtesy to this House and to all the democratically elected members, not to mention to Mr. Speaker and to myself, the Chairman of Ways and Means. The government's own ministerial code cannot be clearer, as set out in paragraph 9.1. When Parliament is in session, the most important announcements of government policy should be made in the first instance to Parliament. Mr. Speaker has always upheld the rights of this House and its members to be treated with respect and to be the first to hear major government policy announcements on behalf of their constituents. As Chairman of Ways and Means, I have responsibility to oversee the House's consideration of the budget statement and the ensuing resolutions, which are described in Erskine May paragraph 36-33 as the most important business of Ways and Means in this House. I want honourable members on all sides of the House to have adequate opportunity to hold the Chancellor to account, rather than hear and read about new policies on a daily basis in the media. And like many, I also expected better. Before I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer, I remind honourable members that copies of the budget resolutions will be available to them from the vote office in members' lobby at the end of the Chancellor's statement and online. Shh. I also remind honourable members that interventions are not taken during the Chancellor's statement, nor during replies to the Leader of the Opposition or the Leader of the Liberal Democrats. I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Chancellor.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it is my understanding that the Office of Budget Responsibility's Economic and Financial Outlook was released on their website before this statement. This is deeply disappointing and a serious error on their part. The Office for Budget Responsibility have already made a statement taking full responsibility for their breach. Madam Deputy Speaker, we are rebuilding our economy. Over the last 16 months, we have overhauled our planning system to get Britain building, forged new trade deals with the United States, India and the European Union, reformed our visa system to bring the brightest and the best to Britain. We changed our fiscal rules that we inherited from the Conservatives and raised public investment to its highest level in 4 decades. And in last year's budget, I raised taxes on business and the wealthiest to close the £22 billion black hole in the public finances left by the party opposites. And we used that money to fund the biggest ever settlement for our National Health Service. They were the fair and necessary choices, and we faced opposition to them, from opponents to planning reform, who will always demand that the future is built somewhere else, not in their backyard. Opponents to trade, who want to take us down the path of isolation and division. Opponents to investment, who believe that the only good thing a government can do is get out of the way. Opponents who insist that the only way to balance the books is to cut public spending. And opponents who say that we don't need to balance the books at all. But we made these choices for a reason. Because after 14 years of Conservative government, working people demanded and deserved change. Investment, not cuts to our public services. Stability for our public finances, the single most important factor in getting the cost of living down. And economic growth, the best means to improve wages, create jobs, and support public services. That is what our plan, that is what this government and our Prime Minister are all about. Today's budget builds on the choices that we have made since July last year. To cut NHS waiting lists, to cut the cost of living, and to cut debt and borrowing. No doubt we will face opposition again, but I have yet to see a credible or a fairer alternative plan for working people. These are my choices, the right choices for a fairer, a stronger and more secure Britain.
Order. Far too much noise, and I expected so much better from you, Dr. Luke Evans. You're meant to be a leader in your community. Simmer down, Chancellor.
I'm happy for them to shout as much as they like, Madam Deputy Speaker, as long as they do it from the opposition benches where they can't cause any more damage. I said there would be no return to austerity, and I meant it. This budget will maintain investment in our economy and in our National Health Service. I said I would cut the cost of living, and I meant it. This budget will bring down inflation and provide immediate relief for families. I said I would cut debt and borrowing, and I meant it. Because of this budget, borrowing will fall as a share of GDP in every year of this forecast. Our net financial debt will be lower at the end of the forecast than it is today, and I will more than double the headroom against our stability rule to £21.7 billion, meeting our stability rule and meeting it a year early. These are my choices, not austerity, not borrowing, not turning a blind eye to unfairness. My choices are a budget for fair taxes, strong public services and a stable economy. That is the Labour choice. Growth is the engine that carries every one of our ambitions forward, through stability, investment and reform. The platform from which British ambition can finally get moving again. Because growth doesn't just appear out of thin air. It is built patiently and stubbornly by people who take risks, by founders who bet their savings on an idea, by firms breaking into new markets, developing new technologies and creating new jobs and new opportunities, by the men and the women who work hard every day in all parts of our country. Our job is not to watch from the sidelines, but to partner with them, backing them every step of the way, to match private enterprise with public ambition. I would like to thank my team of officials at the Treasury for their hard work in preparing this budget. In the spring, the Office of Budget Responsibility forecast that our economy would grow by 1% this year. I said then that Britain would defy the forecasts, and defy them we have. The OBR have upgraded Britain's growth for this year from 1% to 1.5%, reaching the same conclusions as the IMF, the OECD and the Bank of England, who have already upgraded their forecasts. Today, the OBR have published the result of their review of the supply side of the economy. They are clear that this is not about the last 14 months. It is about the previous 14 years. The legacy of Brexit and the pandemic, and the damaging decisions by the party opposite. Cutting public spending, leaving communities and entire regions behind, starving our economy of investment and weakening our public services. As a result of their review, The OBR are reducing their expectations for productivity growth by 0.3 percentage points to 1% by the end of the forecast. They say today, and I quote, real GDP is forecast to grow by 1.5% on average over the forecast due to lower underlying productivity growth. There is an impact on our public finances too. The OBR say that their productivity forecast will mean £16 billion less in tax receipts by 2030. These forecasts are the Tories' legacy, not Britain's destiny.
Order. It is very hard to hear the Chancellor over all the shouting. And Mr. Holmes, you promised me yesterday you were going to be on top behaviour in the first few minutes. Chancellor.
We beat the forecasts this year and we will beat them again. By boosting trade, not blocking it. By increasing investment, not cutting it. By championing innovation, not stifling it. By backing working people, not making them poorer. Brick by brick, we've been building our economy. Building roads, building homes, getting spades in the ground and cranes in the sky. Growth begins with the spark of an entrepreneur. Half of new jobs in Britain are created by scale-up businesses. And we want those jobs created here, not somewhere else. Our job is to make Britain the best place in the world to start up, to scale up and to stay. So we're widening eligibility for our enterprise incentives, so scale-ups can attract the talent and the capital that they need. Expanding the enterprise management incentive so more companies can offer tax-relieved share options. Re-engineering our enterprise investment and venture capital trust schemes so they don't just back early-stage ideas, but stay with companies as they grow. Introducing UK listings relief, a 3-year exemption from stamp duty reserve tax for companies who choose to list here in Britain. And to continue this work, I am launching a call for evidence on how our tax system can better back entrepreneurs. A targeted review with founders and investors at the heart to make the UK an even more attractive place to grow your business. We are sending a simple message to the world. If you build here, Britain will back you. And our retail investment system should do the same. The UK has some of the lowest levels of retail investment in the G7. And that is not only bad for business, who need that investment to grow, it's bad for savers too. Someone who has invested £1,000 a year in an average stocks and shares ISA every year since 1999 would be £50,000 better off today if they'd put that same money into a cash ISA. And so from April 2027, I will reform our ISA system, keeping the full £20,000 allowance while designating 8,000 of it exclusively for investment, with over 65s retaining the full cash allowance. And thanks to our changes to financial advice and guidance, banks will be able to guide savers to better choices for their hard-earned money. Over 50% of the ISA market, including Hargreaves Lansdown, HSBC, Lloyds, Vanguard and Barclays, have signed up to launch new online hubs to help people invest here in Britain. At this budget, consistent with the commitments in our corporate tax roadmap, I will retain our competitive corporation tax rate, the lowest in the G7, and retain our generous full expensing offer for business investments. I will also introduce a new 40% first-year allowance so that businesses can write off more of the cost of their investment up front, while reducing main rate writing down allowances in line with fiscal constraints. Private investment is the lifeblood of economic growth, but growth needs public investment too. When faced with challenges, previous chancellors have chosen to decrease, delay or cancel capital spending. But low investment is the cause of our productivity problem, not the solution. So my choice is not cuts, not stagnation, but to maintain the additional £120 billion of investment that I provided at the spending review. In transport, to link our towns and our cities, energy infrastructure to power our businesses, and housing, so people can live near good jobs, paying decent wages and growing businesses. That is the Labour choice. I'm grateful to the Financial Secretary to the Treasury for his work in driving our growth agenda forward. As we allocate investment for the infrastructure that is the backbone of economic growth across our country, today I will commit investment for the Lower Thames Crossing. And we're continuing to drive investment in city-region transport, in the Midlands Rail Hub and the Transpennine Route upgrade, along with our commitments to the Northern Growth Corridor, including Northern Powerhouse Rail. It is this Labour government that has overhauled our planning system, and I will today provide further funding to increase planning capacity through a new skills offer, as called for by the British Chamber of Commerce and the Confederation of British Industry. It is this Labour government that has invested in nuclear power, in Sizewell C and in Culham. We are taking forward our commitment to slash electricity prices for thousands of manufacturing businesses, as Make UK and many others have called for. And today I'm pleased to welcome John Finkelton's report, an ambitious plan to cut the red tape that has tied our nuclear industry in knots for decades. And within 3 months we will set out our plan for delivering his recommendations. We are proud of our industrial heritage, and we are determined to build the industry of the future so that we buy, make and sell more here in Britain. That's why, as we increase defence spending, we are investing in Portsmouth, in Barrow and in Plymouth. And I'm pleased to be supporting Team Derby, an initiative to drive growth in one of our defence industry hubs. It's why we stepped in to save British Steel in Scunthorpe and invested in Sheffield Forgemasters. And it's why we've changed government procurement so we can buy British when it is crucial to our national security. For steel, for shipbuilding, and today for AI, driving innovation and building that great industry here in Britain. But it's not just what we invest that matters, it's how we invest. Putting money and power back in the hands of local and regional leaders. Today, we are devolving £13 billion of flexible funding for 7 mayors to invest in skills, business support and infrastructure. I'm extending the business rates retention pilots in the West of England, Liverpool City region and Cornwall until 2029. And providing £30 million for the Kernow Industrial Growth Fund for sectors like critical minerals and marine innovation. I am establishing the Leeds City Fund, a long-term agreement to retain business rates to fund local regeneration projects like the development of Leeds South Bank, and I am allocating £20 million for the new Peterborough Sports Quarter and £16 million for a science centre in Darlington from the Growth Mission Fund. The benefits of investment, the benefits of investment and growth must be built and felt in every part of our United Kingdom. So we are providing an additional £370 million for the Northern Ireland Executive, £505 million for the Welsh Government, and £820 million for the Scottish Government over the spending review period through the Barnett formula. And I am making... Sorry, I didn't quite catch that from the SNP. Did they not hear? Perhaps, Madam Deputy Speaker, they didn't hear. £820 million for the Scottish Government over the spending review period because Anna Sawa asked us to. And I'm making targeted investments in our industrial strategy sectors across the UK. In Northern Ireland, I am providing £17 million to support businesses and strengthen the UK internal market, and backing advanced manufacturing through the Northern Ireland Enhanced Investment Zone. Wales will be the host for 2 AI growth zones, creating more than 8,000 jobs, supported by a £10 million investment in the semiconductors critical for that industry. And we are building the UK's first small modular nuclear reactors with Rolls-Royce at Wilfer in Anglesey. 2 Labour governments working together in Wales to deliver for the people of Wales. And in Scotland, I'm committing over £14 million for low-carbon technologies in Grangemouth, £20 million to renew infrastructure at Inch Green in Inverclyde, and £20 million to redevelop Kirkcaldy Town Centre and Seafront, with construction starting next year. And that's on top of the UK's biggest ever warship export deal with the Norwegian government to build frigates in Glasgow, supporting 4,000 jobs. Investment opposed by the SNP, jobs opposed by the SNP, defence opposed by the SNP, but secured by this Labour government. A growing economy needs strong foundations of economic stability, with borrowing, inflation down and investment up. That is good for business, and it is good for working people, so they have more money in their pockets. Economic stability, safeguarded by ironclad fiscal rules, is our best defence against rising prices and the best way to improve living standards. We've all seen the alternative. 3 years ago, in their clamour to cut taxes for the richest, the Tories under Liz Truss crashed the economy and sent mortgage rates spiralling and brought pensions to the brink. Being so loud, Madam Deputy Speaker, and yet I can't even hear them now. Now, I know that the leader of the Green Party is a keen hypnotherapist, and he believes that he can achieve remarkable things using only the power of his mind. Unfortunately, the only things getting bigger under his approach would be the deficit and the rate of inflation. And for all the damage that the Conservative cuts did to our schools and our hospitals, they also doubled the national debt. Our net financial debt this year will be £2.6 trillion, 83% of GDP, meaning that today, 1 in every £10 that government spends is on debt interest. Not on paying down that debt, but just on paying the interest on the debt that we inherited from the Conservatives. My fiscal rules will get borrowing down while supporting investment. The stability rule, that day-to-day expenditure must be met through tax receipts. And the investment rule, which allows me to increase investment whilst getting debt on a downward path. Those fiscal rules are non-negotiable. I met them at the budget last year, I met them in the spring, and I have met them today. While the current budget balance is in deficit by £28.8 billion in 26-27 and £4.6 billion in 27-28, it moves into a surplus of £3.9 billion in 28-29, £21.7 billion in 29-30, and £24.6 billion in 2030-31, more than doubling our headroom against the stability rule and meeting that rule a year early too. And our net financial debt is 83.3% in 26-27, 83.6% in 27-28, 83.7% in 28-29, falling to 83.0% in 29-30 and 82.2% in 2030-31. Madam Deputy Speaker, I said we would cut the debt, and we are, with debt down by the end of the forecast. And going forwards, to support our commitment to a single fiscal event and further strengthen our economic stability, I will follow the recommendations of the International Monetary Fund by assessing the fiscal rules just once a year at the budget. Despite the challenges we face on productivity, the path of our deficit reduction remains broadly the same as in spring. Public sector net borrowing is due to be £112.1 billion, or 3.5% of GDP in 26-27, 3% in 27-28, 2.6% in 28-29, 1.9% in 29-30, and 1.9% in 2030-31, ending at £67.2 billion, translating into an increase in the net cash requirement next year of £4.2 billion, taking the total to £133.3 billion. According to the IMF, we are due to reduce borrowing more over the rest of this Parliament than any other G7 economy. The Conservatives crashed the economy, we are protecting it. The Conservatives lost control of debt, we are getting debt down. The Conservatives let inflation and interest rates go through the roof. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, since Labour took office, the Bank of England have cut interest rates 5 times. I've made my choices. Not reckless borrowing, not dangerous cuts, but stability for our economy, security for our public finances, and security for family finances too. Those are the Labour choices. Madam Deputy Speaker, Tory austerity left classrooms crumbling and waiting lists sky high, weakened our productivity and choked our economic growth. And now they propose a further £47 billion of cuts to our public services. Well, that is equivalent to cutting every police officer in our country twice over. And then there is Reform, who promise more than £100 billion of cuts, with no details of where those cuts will come from or who will pay for them. A recipe for devastating damage to our public services. People voted for Labour because they wanted roads that aren't full of potholes. They want police on our streets, and they want an NHS that is there when they need it. And we're delivering that. Waiting lists down by 230,000. And not just the 2 million additional appointments we promised, but an additional 5.2 million appointments already delivered since the general election. I joined the Labour Party almost 30 years ago because I could see that the Conservative government that I grew up under didn't care much about schools like mine. Textbooks were rationed. I know that many of you weren't at schools like mine.
There is far too much noise, far too much excitement. People need to calm down a little. Chancellor.
They don't want to hear what the Tories did to schools like mine, but I will tell them. Textbooks rationed, libraries closed, kids herded into porter cabins in the playground, and I came into politics to change that. The money that I allocated at the spending review will fix the crumbling classrooms that the Conservatives left behind and build the schools that they promised but never delivered. And today, thanks to representations from my honourable friends, the members for Wolverhampton North East and Leeds South West and Morley, I will provide £5 million for libraries in secondary schools, building on the £10 million commitment to ensure that every primary school has a school library within this Parliament. And thanks to representations from my honourable friends, the members for Bournemouth East and from Luton North, I am providing £18 million to improve and upgrade playgrounds across England. Madam Deputy Speaker, let there be no doubt that this is a government that is on the side of our kids and who will back their potential. I will not allow the legacies of Conservative neglect to stain our society. Last year, I made changes to the Mine Workers Pension Scheme to ensure that its members receive the fair pensions that they are owed. This year, with thanks to the Minister for Pensions for all his work in this subject, I can go further. I have heard representations from Labour Coalfield MPs, including my honourable friends, the members for Bassetlaw, Blyth and Ashington, Barnsley South, Mansfield and Llanelli, And today I can announce that I will transfer the Investment Reserve Fund of the British Coal Staff Superannuation Scheme to its members. So that the men and the women who worked in our coal industry get a fair deal in their retirement too. And more. Having heard representations from my honourable friends, the members for Banbury and the member for Edinburgh South West, I will index for inflation on pensions accrued before 1997 in the Pension Protection Fund and the Financial Assurance Scheme, so that people whose pension schemes became insolvent, no fault of their own, no longer lose out as the result of inflation. Last year, I also provided funding to compensate the victims of the infected blood scandal, after the previous government failed to budget for the costs of compensation. This year, I have listened to representations from my honourable friend, the member for Eltham and Chislehurst, and my honourable friend, the member for Edinburgh South West. And I'd like to thank the Minister for Employment for her representations over many years on this subject. As a result, I will exempt all payments from the infected blood scheme from inheritance tax, regardless of the circumstances in which those payments are passed down. Madam Deputy Speaker, that is how we should be spending taxpayers' money, on dealing with injustices and building strong public services, not on waste and inefficiency. At the spending review, I set an ambitious target of £14 billion of efficiencies per year by 2029, and I am grateful to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury for driving that work forward, realising savings through AI and automation, and by scrapping NHS England and reducing back office staff by 18,000. At this budget, I will find a further £4.9 billion of efficiencies by 2031, getting rid of police and crime commissioners, cutting the cost of politics and local government, and selling government assets that we no longer have any use for. These savings will be required across government. But for our National Health Service, I will reinvest all of these savings back into the care that people rely on. More nurses, more GPs, more appointments. Restoring the services that faltered under years of Conservative decline and investing in the future of our National Health Service. And today I am announcing £300 million of investment in technology to improve patient service and 250 new neighbourhood health centres. Expanding more services into communities so that people can receive treatment outside of hospitals and get better, faster care where they live. Over 100 of these will be delivered by 2030, including in Birmingham, Truro and Southall. The Labour Party founded our National Health Service, and we will renew our National Health Service. I will take the same approach for defence spending that I take to NHS spending, reinvesting savings back into our national security. In our age of insecurity, Britain will continue to stand with our allies, working in collaboration to secure a sustainable ceasefire for Ukraine, and maintaining our commitment to NATO, with the UK set to spend 2.6% of GDP on defence by April 2027. Madam Deputy Speaker, the public rightly expects that we stamp out fraud, error and waste, and put that money to good use in our schools and our hospitals and other frontline services. My right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, has already announced that she will claw back excess profits from the use of hotels to house asylum seekers, as we phase out the use of those hotels entirely. And we will consult on reforms to indefinite leave to remain and access to taxpayer-funded benefits. The introduction of digital ID will break the link between illegal migration and illegal working. And the HMRC and the Fair Work Agency will crack down on illicit businesses that blight our high streets and undercut illegitimate firms, enforcing the minimum wage, investigating dodgy businesses, and increasing scrutiny of the gig economy, as well as tracking down fraudulent business owners who vanish without paying their taxes. And I'd like to thank my honourable friends, the members for Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes, Lee and Atherton, and Kensington and Bayswater for their representations on this subject. And I'll take further steps to prevent and track down unpaid tax, which will together, these reforms will raise nearly £10 billion a year by 2030, including through new powers for HMRC to pursue the promoters of tax avoidance schemes. I am building on our successful use of targeted checks on welfare claims to root out fraud and error and prevent public money being paid to people who are not entitled to it. And I would like to thank Tom Hayhoe, the COVID Corruption Commissioner, for his work in helping to chase down nearly £400 million from dodgy pandemic spending and contracts. Tory contracts handed out by Tory ministers to Tory peers and Tory friends. Well, that money belongs in our schools and in our hospitals.
It is so noisy now, we can barely hear the Chancellor. Everybody needs to calm down. Chancellor.
Well, I wouldn't want any honourable member to miss this. So we are chasing down that money, and we've got almost £400 million back from dodgy pandemic spending and contracts. Tory contracts handed out by Tory ministers to Tory peers and Tory donors. Well, that money belongs in our schools and in our hospitals, and we are getting that money back. Deputy Speaker, we are ramping up sanctions on Russia, and we are freezing known Russian assets. But let me be clear, I don't actually mean the honourable member for Clacton. Under the Conservatives... Order. You don't need commentary from the backbenches, and Mr. Dewhurst, you are so loud. It's remarkable how far your voice carries. Chancellor. Under the Conservatives, the cost of our welfare system increased by nearly 1 percentage point of GDP, equivalent to £88 billion in just 5 years. The broken welfare system that we inherited wrote off millions of people as too sick to work. And we will reform that system so that it is a system that does not count the cost of failure, but one that protects people who cannot work and empowers those who can. We have brought back face-to-face assessments for disability benefits. Those are the face-to-face assessments that the Shadow Chancellor got rid of when he was Work and Pensions Secretary. And our changes to universal credit will get 15,000 people back into work, a figure confirmed today. The former Health Secretary, Alan Milburn, will review the causes of rising youth inactivity, and we are already taking action. I'm grateful to the Federation of Small Businesses and Small Business Britain for their representations on apprenticeships. And today I am announcing funding to make the training for under 25 apprenticeships completely free for small and medium-sized enterprises. And funding our new youth guarantee, providing £820 million over the next 3 years to give young people who are let down by the Conservatives the support and the opportunity that they deserve. Guaranteeing every young person a place in college, an apprenticeship or personalised job support. And after 18 months, 18 to 21-year-olds will be offered paid work, not benefits. The Motability Scheme was set up to protect the most vulnerable, not to subsidise the lease on a Mercedes-Benz. And so I am making reforms that will reduce generous taxpayer subsidies, and Motability have confirmed that they will remove luxury vehicles from their scheme, getting the scheme back to its original purpose of offering cost-effective leases to disabled people. And taxpayers' money should not be spent on pensions for people abroad, who only lived here for a couple of years and may never even have paid a penny in tax. The Conservatives allowed thousands of people living abroad to buy their way into the state pension for as little as £3.50 a week, debasing the purpose of our pension system. And so I will abolish access to Class 2 voluntary national insurance contributions for people living abroad, increasing the time that someone has to live or work in Britain to 10 years and increasing the contributions that they must pay. These reforms improve our welfare system, they support our young people, protect those who need it most, and put an end to Conservative waste and unfairness. Madam Deputy Speaker, to break the cycle of austerity, we need a fair and a sustainable tax system, one that generates revenues to fund the public services that we all use, and supports investment to grow our economy. That does mean that today I am asking everyone to make a contribution. The previous Conservative government froze personal tax thresholds from 2021 to 2028. And today I will maintain all income tax and equivalent national insurance thresholds at their current level. The Right Honourable Lady supported these freezes when her party made them. She might want to forget about it, but the British people never will. At the same time, we are ensuring that people only in receipt of the basic or new state pension do not have to pay small amounts of tax through simple assessment from April 2027. I will also keep the Plan 2 student loan repayments threshold at its 2026-27 level for 3 years. Madam Deputy Speaker, I know that maintaining these thresholds is a decision that will affect working people. I said that last year, and I won't pretend otherwise now. Madam Deputy Speaker, I am asking everyone to make a contribution, but I can keep that contribution as low as possible because I will make further reforms to our tax system today to make it fairer and to ensure that the wealthiest contribute the most. The Conservatives knew that our tax system didn't work. Time and time again, they ducked the necessary reforms, leaving a system unfit for a changing economy, with unfairness that they refused to address. Currently, a landlord with an income of £25,000 will pay nearly £1,200 less in tax than their tenants with the same salary, because no national insurance is charged on property, dividend or savings income. It's not fair that the tax system treats different types of income so differently. And so I will increase the basic and higher rate of tax on property, savings and dividend income by 2 percentage points, and the additional rate of tax on property and savings income by 2 percentage points. Even after these reforms, 90% of taxpayers will still pay no tax at all on their savings. As well as narrowing the gap between the tax on income from assets and income from work, I also believe that a fair society is one where the wealthiest pay their fair share. The reforms I made last year will raise an additional £8 billion a year by 2020-30 from wealth. I increased taxes last year on private equity, private schools and private jets. I abolished the non-dom tax regime. And this year, I will make 2 changes to cap trust charges and prevent avoidance. I reformed inheritance tax on agricultural and business assets. And this year, I am aligning those reforms with wider inheritance tax rules by allowing the transfer of the 100% relief allowance between spouses, balancing the taxation of these valuable assets with the realities of family life. In this budget, I will take further steps to deal with a long-standing source of wealth inequality in our country. A Band D home in Darlington or Blackpool pays just under £2,400 in council tax, nearly £300 more than a £10 million mansion in Mayfair. And so, from 2028, I am introducing the high-value council tax surcharge in England, an annual £2,500 charge for properties worth more than £2 million, rising to £7,500 for properties worth more than £5 million. This will be collected alongside council tax, levied on owners, and we will consult on options for support or deferral. This new surcharge will raise over £400 million by 2031 and will be charged on less than the top 1% of properties. Madam Deputy Speaker, reliefs in our tax system cost the taxpayer billions of pounds a year, but many of them no longer serve their original purpose. The government rightly provides generous tax relief for people paying into a pension, relieving income tax on all contributions and on the investment itself, as well as national insurance relief on employer contributions, at a cost of over £70 billion a year to the Exchequer. This budget makes no changes to those reliefs or to the tax-free lump sum. But salary sacrifice for pensions, which was intended to be a small part of our pension system, is forecast to almost treble in cost to other taxpayers, from £2.8 billion in 2017 to £8 billion by 2030, with the greatest benefit going to the highest earners, or to those in the financial services sector putting their bonuses into pensions tax-free, while those on the minimum wage or those whose employers don't offer salary sacrifice don't benefit at all. That is not sustainable for our public finances, putting pressure on the tax that everyone else pays. And so I am introducing a £2,000 cap on salary sacrifice into a pension, with contributions above that taxed in the same way as other employee pension contributions. That is a pragmatic step so that people, especially on low and middle incomes, can continue to use salary sacrifice for their pension without paying any more in tax than they do now, and to give individuals and employers time to adjust to these new arrangements. These changes will come into effect in 2029. The coalition government introduced 100% relief from capital gains tax on business sales made to employee ownership trusts, creating a route for gains to go completely untaxed when businesses are sold. I will reduce that relief to 50%, retaining a strong incentive for employee-owned companies. And as we work towards doubling the size of the cooperative economy, the Department for Business and Trade will launch a call for evidence on how we can better support co-ops to grow. Because of the changes that I have made to capital gains tax this year and last year, receipts are forecast to increase from £14 billion this year to £30 billion by 2030. To support our high streets, I am announcing a package of regulatory changes as called for by UK Hospitality and the British Retail Consortium. And I will support the Great British Pub through our new national licensing framework, encouraging councils to back our pubs and to back late-night venues with greater freedoms. For business rates, I will introduce permanently lower tax rates for over 750,000 retail, hospitality and leisure properties, the lowest rates since 1991, paid for through higher rates on properties worth more than £500,000, like the warehouses used by online giants. Alongside this, I will introduce a package of support worth over £4.3 billion over the next 3 years for a property of any size seeing a large increase in their bill. And to support a level playing field in retail, I will stop online firms from undercutting our high street businesses by ensuring customs duty applies on parcels of any value. I will reform our motoring taxes, exempting search and rescue vehicles from vehicle excise duty as called for by my honourable friends, the member for the Western Isles and for Whitehaven and Workington. And because all cars contribute to the wear and tear on our roads, I will ensure that drivers are taxed according to how much they drive and not just by the type of car they own, by introducing the electric vehicle excise duty on electric cars. This will be payable each year alongside vehicle excise duty at 3p per mile for electric cars and 1.5p for plug-in hybrids, helping us to double road maintenance funding in England over the course of this Parliament. And alongside this, I am providing support to boost our British car industry, increasing the threshold for the expensive car supplement on electric vehicles to £50,000, saving over 1 million motorists £440 a year. Providing £1.3 billion additional funding for the electric car grant, extending it to 2030 and taking total funding to £2 billion, as well as delaying changes to the employee car ownership scheme. In addition, we're investing a further £200 million to accelerate the rollout of EV charging, as well as 100% business rates relief for EV charge points for the next decade, with thanks to my honourable friend, the member for Camborne and Redruth, for his representations on this policy. And I will improve competition in our taxi industry by ending ride-hailing companies' use of a discount scheme intended for coach tours, as called for by Steve McNamara, the General Secretary of the Licensed Taxi Drivers Association, legislating to restrict access so that everyone pays fairly and protecting £700 million of tax revenue each year. I am responding to our consultation on landfill tax, and listening to representations, particularly from our house building industry. I will not converge towards a single rate, but I will prevent the gap between the two rates from widening to balance the need to address tax avoidance in the current structure. I will today publish Ray McCann's report into the loan charge along with the government's response, setting out a new settlement opportunity that will finally allow people to finalise their position and draw a line under this long-standing issue. And I'd like to thank my honourable friend, the member for Milton Keynes Central, for her representations on this subject. I will continue with the planned uprating for tobacco duties that I set out last year and uprate alcohol duties by inflation, along with our plans to introduce a vaping products duty in 2026 and changes to the soft drinks industry levy announced by my right honourable friend, the Health Secretary, yesterday. And I'd like to thank the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury for his work on all the tax measures in this budget. I will also reform gambling taxes in response to the rise in online gambling. Remote gaming is associated with the highest levels of harm. And so I am increasing remote gaming duty from 21% to 40%. With duty on online betting increasing from 15% to 25%. I am making no change to the taxes on in-person gambling or on horse racing. And I am abolishing bingo duty entirely from April next year. Taken together, my reforms to gambling tax will raise over £1 billion per year by 2031. As a result of the tax reforms I have made today, I can confirm that I will not be increasing national insurance, the basic, higher or additional rates of income tax or VAT. And I have kept everyone's contribution as low as possible through reforms to make our tax system stronger, closing loopholes, ensuring that the wealthiest pay their share, and building a tax system that is fairer for the future as our economy changes. On the day I became Chancellor, I said that I would judge my time in office a success if I knew that ordinary children from working class backgrounds were living more fulfilling lives. Their horizons expanded, their potential realised. I joined the Labour Party, I came into politics, because I believe that every child has equal worth and deserves an equal chance to achieve their promise. The biggest barrier to equal opportunity is child poverty. Because for every child that grows up in poverty, our society pays a triple cost. The first and the heaviest is to the child. Going to school hungry, waking up in a cold home, or in another B&B. While other children enjoy the advanced quiet space at home to work in, too many go without. And there is also the cost of supporting a family in poverty, which ends up in the lap of overstretched councils, who can do no more than shunt them into temporary accommodation at huge cost to local taxpayers. Then there is the future cost, to our economy and to our society, of wasted talent and a welfare system that bears the cost of failure for decades to come. Young people with so much to contribute, but whose potential is suffocated early by limited life chances and missed opportunities, struggling to make their way in a society that did not look out for them. I don't intend to preside over a status quo that punishes children for the circumstances of their birth and demands that we all pay 3 times over for it. Since last July, we've rolled out free breakfast clubs in schools. We're expanding free school meals to 500,000 more kids, lifting 100,000 children out of poverty as we do it. We've passed the Renters' Rights Act and we've extended the childcare offer. And I'm proud of all of that. But it's not enough. Because there is one policy that pushes kids into poverty more than any other. It was introduced by the party opposite. They said it would save money and that it would bring about behavioural change, disincentivising poorer families from having more children. Well, even on its own terms, it failed. The welfare bill has continued to rise, and there's been no difference in the size of families. But what it has done is to push hundreds of thousands of children into poverty since it was introduced. They said they were punishing parents' choices, but it's the kids who have paid the price. They've paid the price for the policies of a party which opted for cynical gimmicks over real savings in our welfare system. I understand that many families are finding times hard and that many kids have had to make difficult choices when it comes to having kids. And there are many reasons why people choose to have children and then find themselves in difficult times. The death of a partner, separation, ill health, a lost job. I don't believe that children should have to bear the brunt of that. And neither can I, in good conscience, leave in place the vile policy known as the rape clause, requiring women to prove if their child has been conceived non-consensually to receive support. I'm proud to be Britain's first female Chancellor of the Exchequer. I take the responsibilities that come with that seriously. I will not tolerate the grotesque indignity of women of the rape clause any longer. It is dehumanising, it is cruel, and I will remove it from the statute book. And so because I am tackling fraud and error in our welfare system, because I am cracking down on tax avoidance, because I am reforming gambling taxation, I can announce today, fully costed and fully funded, the removal of the 2-child limit in full from April. This side of the house. It's amazing what people get so angry about, and we've seen their true colours today. The thing they get angry about is lifting children out of poverty.
Order! Our constituents will want to hear the Chancellor.
I think our constituents have heard all they need to from the party opposites today. We on this side of the House do not believe that the solution to a broken welfare system is to punish the most vulnerable. We are lifting 450,000 children out of poverty with the end of the two-child limit. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, combined with other actions we are taking, this Labour government is achieving the biggest reduction in child poverty over a parliament since records began. That is the difference that this Labour government is making. Madam Deputy Speaker, I know how worried families are about the cost of everything. Worried that their money won't stretch to the end of the month. Worried that price... I think if you've got a house that's worth £5 million a year, you can probably afford it. But you get more exercise about reducing child poverty than you do about the richest paying more. Under this government, wages have risen by more since we were elected than in 10 years under the last government, with lower interest rates already saving families £1,200 a year off a typical new mortgage, compared to that to when Liz Truss was Prime Minister. But I know that people still face pressure on their budgets day to day and week to week. And where there is more to do, where we can provide relief, we are doing it. Extending the bus fare cap, cracking down on rip-off price hikes, freezing prescription charges and freezing rail fares for the first time in 30 years. I am increasing the basic and new state pension by 4.8%, an increase of £440 per year for the basic state pension, and an increase of £575 per year for the new state pension, in line with our commitment to the triple lock. At the election, we promised a genuine living wage, and we are delivering it. At the budget last year, I increased the national minimum wage and the national living wage, and I am doing the same this year too. Accepting the recommendations of the Low Pay Commission in full, and increasing the minimum wage for 18 to 20-year-olds from £10 to £10.85 an hour, and increasing the living wage from £12.21 to £12.71 an hour. Under current plans, the temporary 5p cut to fuel duty that was introduced during the pandemic will come to an end in April, and fuel duty will be uprated in line with inflation. But I know that the cost of travelling to and from work is still too expensive. And so I am extending the 5p cut until September 2026. And because I know that changes in wholesale prices are not always passed on to motorists, I am bringing in new rules to mandate petrol forecourts to share real-time price rises through a new fuel finder, empowering drivers to find the cheapest fuel, calling out rip-offs and strengthening competition, saving the average household £40 a year. Madam Deputy Speaker, one of the greatest drivers of the rising cost of living is the cost of energy prices. The cause of high energy bills must be tackled at source, and so we are investing in energy security, in nuclear and renewable energy, and in insulation through our Warm Homes Plan. But that's not enough when people are struggling with energy bills today. The Conservatives' Eco Scheme was presented as a plan to tackle fuel poverty. It costs households £1.7 billion a year on their bills. And for 97% of families in fuel poverty, the scheme, get this, has cost them more than it's saved. It is a failed scheme, and so I am scrapping it, along with taking other legacy costs off bills. And as a result, I can tell you today that for every family, we are keeping our promise to get energy bills down and cut the cost of living. With £150 cut from the average household bill from April next year. Money off bills and in the pockets of working people, that is my choice. Not to neglect Britain's energy security like the Tories did. Not to leave working families to bear the brunt of high prices like the Tories did, but to get energy costs down now and in the future. That is the Labour choice. And Madam Deputy Speaker, one more thing. Because of our action on bills and on prices, as a direct result of this budget, the Office for Budget Responsibility confirmed today that inflation is coming down faster and will be a full 0.4 percentage points lower next year. That's the benefit of a Labour government cutting the cost of living. Madam Deputy Speaker, this Labour government is changing our country. In the face of challenges on our productivity, I will grow our economy through stability, investment and reform. I've met my fiscal rules and built our economic resilience for the future. I have asked everyone to contribute, yes, for the security of our country and the brightness of its future. But I have kept that contribution as low as possible by reforming our tax system, making it fairer and stronger for the future. I have protected our NHS, maintaining public investment and driving efficiency in government spending. I've taken action on our broken welfare system, rooting out waste and lifting children out of poverty. And I have cut the cost of living with money off bills and prices frozen, all while keeping every single one of our manifesto commitments. Those are my choices.
Mr. Rankin, Ms. Morton, your voice carries right across the chamber. Right across the chamber. Try and take a breath every so often. Chancellor.
Those are my choices. Not austerity, not reckless borrowing, but cutting the debt, cutting waiting lists and cutting the cost of living. Those are Labour choices, promised and delivered by this budget, promised and delivered by this Labour government. And Madam Deputy Speaker, I commend this statement to the House.
Under Standing Order number 51, the first motion entitled Provisional Collection of Taxes must be decided without debate. Will the Chancellor of the Exchequer please move formally? Chancellor, please move formally.
Formally.
The question is that pursuant to Section 5 of the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act 1968, provisional statutory effect shall be given to the following motions. Stamp duty reserve tax, UK listing relief, motion number 60. Rates of tobacco products duty, motion number 65. As many of their opinions say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the motion entitled Income Tax Charge. It is on this motion that the debate will take place today and on the succeeding days. The questions on this motion and on the remaining motions will be put at the end of the budget debate on Tuesday, the 2nd of December. I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer to move the motion formally.
Formally.
The question is that income tax is charged for the tax year 2026-27, and it is declared that this and is expedient in the public interest that this resolution should have statutory effect under the provisions of the Provisional Collections of Taxes Act 1968. I now call the Leader of the Opposition. Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And may I congratulate the Right Honourable Lady on delivering her second budget. I hope she enjoyed it, because it really should be her last. Yeah! What a total humiliation. A total humiliation.
Can colleagues who are exiting the chamber do so swiftly so we can focus on the Leader of the Opposition? Swiftly exit, quietly. Right. Leader of the Opposition.
It's a total humiliation, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last year, she put up taxes by £40 billion, the biggest tax rate in British history. She promised that she wouldn't be back for more. She swore it was a one-off. She told everyone that from now on, it would be stability and she would pay for everything with growth. Today, she has broken every single one of those promises. If she had any decency, she would resign. At the last budget, she said she was proud to be the country's first ever female chancellor. After this budget, she will go down as the country's worst ever chancellor.
And the Chief Whip in particular knows that we don't allow clapping in the chamber. Leader of the Opposition.
Today she has announced a new tax rate of £26 billion. They're all cheering. Household income is down. Spending policies in this budget increase borrowing in every year. That smorgasbord of misery we just heard from her can be summed up in one sentence. Labour are hiking taxes to pay for welfare. This is a budget for Benefit Street, Madam Deputy Speaker, paid for by working people. This budget increases benefits for 560,000 families by an average of £5,000. They are hiking taxes on workers, pensioners and savers to pay for handouts to keep their backbenchers quiet. These are the same, yes, they can chanter all they like. These are the same backbenchers, Madam Deputy Speaker, who cheered last year when she taxed jobs and left more than 100,000 people without an income. They cheered because they didn't understand the consequences of what they were doing, and they still don't. Madam Deputy Speaker, it's not been an easy time for the Chancellor. No one liked seeing her sitting on those benches as it dawned on her that her own backbenchers were going to do to her political career what she's done to our economy. But she could have chosen today to bring down welfare spending and get more people into work. Instead, she has chosen to put up tax after tax after tax, taxes on workers, taxes on savers, taxes on pensioners, taxes on investors, taxes on homes, holidays, cars, I think even milkshakes, taxes on anyone doing the right thing. She and this government have lost what little credibility they had left, and no one will ever trust her again. What's amazing, Madam Deputy Speaker, is that she has the nerve to come to this House and claim this is all someone else's fault. A laundry list of excuses. Yes. Madam Deputy Speaker, they blame the Conservatives as if we've been sneaking into the Treasury under the cover of darkness to give pay rises to the unions. She inherited an economy with inflation at 2% and record high employment. She has tanked it in just over a year. Endless excuses. She blames Brexit. She blames Donald Trump. She needs to blame herself. And I've got some news for her. The Chancellor didn't seem to understand what the OBR was saying. Inflation is up, not down, and that inflation was stoked by her tax and spend decisions. The economic fiscal outlook says that they expect inflation to stay higher for longer. Everybody else has read it. She still hasn't read the OBR analysis. She blames higher than expected borrowing costs. Where does she think they came from? Those borrowing costs are driven by her lack of grip. She is paying more, you're saying us, she's paying more to borrow than Greece. She is paying more to borrow than at any point under the 14 years of Conservative government. Perhaps if Labour MPs read a book sometimes, they would know something. That includes an energy crisis, Madam Deputy Speaker. Under us, we had an energy crisis sparked by a war in Ukraine and a global pandemic. What is her excuse? What is her excuse? She is taking the public for fools, but they are under no illusions whose fault this is. The fact is, the bad choices she is making today, choices to break promises, choices to put up taxes, choices to spend more of other people's money, are because of the bad choices she made at the last disastrous budget. If you want growth, You need to start with knowing what kind of country you want to be and make a plan to get there. Create certainty for the people and businesses who will drive growth. There is no growth and no plan because Labour focused on settling scores and scratching the itches they had in opposition. She promised stability, she delivered chaos. Just look at the circus around this budget. First the leaks, then more leaks to try to undo the damage. Calling panicky press conferences, U-turning on her U-turns, rolling the pitch one day